And Joe,
yes, sir.
A lot of our customers that buy the smaller 1 and 2Ks deal with this issue all the time, and they're working with customers that are asking for those oily beans.
Yes.
And they say, well, how do you manage that? And I say, you provide the customer what they want, but you provide them options. That customer isn't wrong. They're going off nostalgia, or they're backing up and they're familiar with that charred, roasted flavor, and they think that's the best the coffee can do. So I suggest to them that they use that as a dialogue opportunity, because that customer is not wrong. That customer is willing to pay $14 for a full pound of that roasted coffee that's a bit charred. Give them some opportunity. Use that for an education.
Absolutely. Yes, so if you want that more charred flavor, there are a couple of ways to go about it. One, if you go through first crack and you continue to move very quickly into second crack, you can roast the outside of that coffee. Those outside layers will start to get that charry flavor, but the interior of that coffee may be kind of protected because it's not moving quite at the same speed as the outside. So you hit that second crack pretty hard, and then you drop it as you move into that second crack. And you can preserve some of the natural flavor of the coffee that you developed into the coffee, while at the same time adding that char flavor to the outside. So that would be more like your medium to medium rare steak approach to charring the coffee. Or if you slow it down as you're moving into second crack, by slowing it down, you can kind of break down some of the unique characteristics of a coffee, almost to the point where you can even bake it if you do this more exaggerated, and then bring it into second crack nice and slowly, and then you get a more unilateral flavor, and you can hit the same target much more easy. It's kind of like landing a plane. If you land the plane very, very quickly, it's very hard to hit the runway in the exact same place every time, because that last moment of landing the plane is very volatile. Roasting coffee into second crack is very similar. If you move in very quickly, it's very hard to hit the exact same target of flavor every single time. The further into the roast you get, the more a small amount or a small range of change will make an impact in the cup. If I drop a coffee a minute after first crack and then a minute and 10 seconds after first crack, the difference is going to be a lot more subtle. However, the same coffee doing that in second crack, if I'm moving fairly quickly, the change is going to be very great, because those molecular reactions are moving at a much faster pace, and I'll go further down that chain of reaction much more quickly. So what else is happening? Why does second crack even happen? So first crack, we know it's from the bean getting inflated from all of these chemical reactions that are taking place, and the seed is swelling up, swelling up, swelling up, to the point where the pressure builds up so much so that the coffee seed bursts open and allows all of that gas to release. However, once it's released that gas, now the bean is more porous and open, and any more gases that are being built up in the coffee are starting to gas off very quickly. However, as we move through second crack, the actual cellulose structure of the seed itself begins to decompose. And that decomposition adds for a lot more gas, especially carbon dioxide, to start building up on the inside of that seed. And with that structural integrity breaking down, it doesn't really need to swell the seed anymore. It's so brittle that it'll just start crackling and breaking down the actual cell structure itself. If you move quickly into second crack, you'll see those little pocks fly off. We call that chipping. Those little discs that pop off, they'll blast off the side of the coffee and leave a little crater. That is something that tells us we're moving too quickly and much more violently or volatilely through that phase of second crack. So slow it down if you see that. That is actually considered a roast defect by the SCAA and others. So slow it down, keep it chill.
Heat, too fast.
That's right, especially too much convective heat will do that.
Our guys that are on poppers at home will often see those divots or chipping right out of the side of the bean, those black circular areas.
And generally, if you're roasting on a popper, you're using a lot of air. And that air, that convective heat is what is doing that. You can modulate your poppers. I'm sure you guys know this from several threads on Home Barista, to where you have a dimmer switch for the power that your popper has. You can also gently shake it at a lower heat so that it doesn't have quite so much air, but you're still keeping it aloft. There are a few tricks that you can do to kind of slow down that second crack.
Sure.
Okay, so oil. What is the oil? Are you creating the oil? Where is it coming from? As you open up that seed more and the pores of the seed become more open, which is through the degradation of cellulose and also through the swelling of the seed that took place during first crack and beyond, you are allowing for those large fat molecules that have now broken free from where they normally had been. You're allowing them to now just ooze out onto the outside of the coffee. That oil will go bad very quickly. A darker roast is also open to oxygenation very quickly. A darker roast is also open to leaching its carbon dioxide much more quickly. All of that to say, a dark roast will stale very quickly, okay? So a lot of the more nostalgic flavors that we think of in coffee are actually also stale flavors in coffee. So I do highly recommend that if you are doing dark roasts, that you use those dark roasts very quickly. If you don't, the oil on the outside becomes rancid. Some studies have showed that rancidity of oil in coffee takes place within about 30 seconds. Of course, that's unavoidable. If you have the coffee out on the cooling tray, it's going to cool within that amount of time. Rancidity is simply the oxygenation of the fat of the oil itself, which can cause off flavors. So I do recommend that if you are going to go dark, try to get the flavor of charring onto the coffee in a way that still preserves some of the flavor within the seed while not allowing a bunch of oil to come pouring out. So hitting the first part of second crack to where you are getting a little bit of that charring can bridge the gap to your drinkers that are looking for a more nostalgic cup, while at the same time promoting the longevity of that coffee and allowing that coffee to not go stale in a very quick way.